Hello, everyone, and welcome to a series of pre-event speaker interviews in the run-up to our World Hydrogen North America Congress, which is taking place in Houston this year from the 31st of March. I am Dominic Coyne, the Program Director, and today I'm joined here by Andy Steinhubl from the Center of Houston's Future. Andy serves as the chairman of the Hydrogen Committee for the Center of Houston's Future, which is a non-profit organization with a mission to identify problems and opportunities which lie ahead for the 9-county Houston region. Andy is also a founding member of Hydrogen International, which is a low-cost green hydrogen developer. And Andy has been a stalwart supporter of the World Hydrogen Leaders event. So it's a pleasure to have you with us today, Andy. Welcome.
Thank you, Dom. Great to be with you this morning.
Good to have you. Good to have you. So to kick this interview off and to begin, would you be able to tell me a little bit about your background, how you got into your current career, and perhaps if you could touch upon the work you did with the Center for Houston's Future and laying the groundwork for the application of the HyVelocity Hub.
Oh, great. Thanks, Dom. Happy to. So I started my career with Exxon and in Houston. I started my career in energy with Exxon in Houston as a production operations engineer. And then after completing business school, spent 35 years in management consulting, primarily with McKinsey, and then finishing my career at KPMG, where I launched the energy strategy practice. And over the course of that time, paralleled the issues facing the industry, such that toward the end of my full-time career, which is in 2020, began working increasingly on renewables, battery storage, hydrogen, and then continued that following my full-time career, joining the nonprofit board as you mentioned, the Center for Houston's Future, FlexGen, which is a battery storage company, privately backed company on their board, and then Green Hydrogen International. Part of my work for the center, and this bridged the time prior to my retirement and then joining the board, I led an effort to develop a vision for hydrogen in the greater Houston energy system. And that looked at how hydrogen could penetrate over time, into what sectors, through what pathways. So we developed a model of gray to blue to green and how that transition might affect over time. And that laid the groundwork then to coalesce a number of industry players in the region who brought their data and expertise and refined that vision and ultimately submitted the proposal, which was ultimately successfully accepted as the HyVelocity Hub.
Well, congratulations on your work there. Everyone's very excited to see what happens with HyVelocity going forward. Just one question on what you mentioned with your background. You've obviously got a varied experience in the energy industry. How do you think that's helped in Houston specifically? Because obviously there's a lot of different energy incentives or energy operations going on in the Texas area. So I think perhaps our audience would be keen to know how you've taken those experiences looking at different energy types and put that into your work with the Center of Houston's Future.
That's a good question. I mean, the Houston area, as you indicate, is quite interesting, and some of those dynamics are what make it such a great hub. So in Houston, you've got multiple production pathway opportunities because there is a lot of gray hydrogen produced today. There's a big existing hydrogen industry that overlays salt cavern storage opportunities existing in future. It overlays depleted and active reservoirs, which lend themselves to CCUS. It sits on a port. Texas is also a strong renewable resource state, so #1 in wind, soon to be #1 in solar. that can be integrated into the hydrogen system. Many sources of demand, big refining complex, petrochemical complex, heavy manufacturing, a lot of power production. So a lot of things come together in the greater Houston area, which requires an understanding of the energy system and its various components and the interplays and dynamics. And that's true of kind of the past system and how all that works. And then as you look to the future, how do you bring, in this case, hydrogen into that energy system in a integrated way and a non-disruptive transition?
Yeah.
So it helps very much.
And looking to the future a bit, to build on what you were discussing, would you be able to perhaps share your opinions with the audience on the challenges you see in the market going forward in Houston specifically, and with the hydrogen HyVelocity Hub in mind, and perhaps also the wider region of North America?
So when it comes to hydrogen well, I guess the way I think about hydrogen, you have existing markets and new markets. So again, there's a large existing hydrogen industry in the greater Houston area because hydrogen is an essential feedstock for refining. It's an essential feedstock for various petrochemicals, particularly ammonia. And so the hydrogen industry exists to support those industries. But hydrogen in the new uses is competing with something. In some cases, it competes with diesel if we're talking about heavy transportation or aviation fuel and jet marine fuel. But most of the hydrogen in new uses is going into places where natural gas is being used today. So process heat, heavy manufacturing, steel, cement, et cetera, all those applications you hear about, that's largely displacing natural gas. The challenge in the United States is we have low-cost natural gas coming out of the shale boom, et cetera. So Henry Hub today is over $3, not much over $3. Even if hydrogen was to get to $1 a kilogram, which is the Earthshot objective, that's equivalent to about $8 an MCF of natural gas. So there's a big gap between that $3-ish and $8 in the US. Now, if I go overseas, I've got a little better pricing umbrella, if you will, because the cost of natural gas landed in Asia or landed in the UK is in the double digits. So I have more umbrella there. But keep in mind, I can't ship hydrogen as hydrogen, or at least not today. So I've got to convert it to something, most of the early projects, ammonia. So then I've got to, if I need the hydrogen as a molecule, I've got to convert it back, which adds more cost in the system. So it's a very challenging market situation, US in particular, but even in the overseas markets where I have a little bit more pricing headroom, it's not easy there either.
And how do you envisage the HyVelocity Hub to play a role in dealing with I guess the push out of production and the demand side going forward?
Well, HyVelocity and the PTC, I would add, are supply side incentives, Colin. Both of them are supply side incentives because the hub is going to be money that supports projects that the sponsors have proposed. So one that's been publicly announced and talked about is Exxon's Baytown project, where they're going to produce blue hydrogen to support their own very large refining petrochemical complex in Baytown, but also build it at a scale such that they can collect additional CO2 and sequester that and produce enough blue hydrogen for export purposes. So a project like that is going to be incented. but largely it's going to be to produce export volumes whose home has yet to be secured. So that hub will get some money, that project will get some money, and given how the PTC credits are playing out, it will probably also get some PTC incentive. But that just addresses the supply side, not ultimately will it find a home in the market.
Yeah, yeah. And that's an important discussion that we're planning on having at the event. Andy, you're going to be joining us as a speaker in two different topic areas, one of which is looking at the domestic versus the international hydrogen demand side dilemma and where everything is going to go, who's going to be buying it. You're a proponent of a global perspective on that. Would you be able to give us a little bit of a teaser on perhaps what might get shared in that panel at the event?
Well, I believe I might have alluded here a moment ago to why I think a global perspective is needed in the sense that I see hydrogen as being analogous to the global LNG market. So there are certain regions, countries in the world that are resource rich and low cost resource rich, and others that are on the flip side are large demand sources, consumers, but are not necessarily resource rich. In the case of hydrogen, it's the same, and the U.S. again is on the side of being resource long, whether it be blue hydrogen, which again is a way to use natural gas and convert it to hydrogen, or green hydrogen potentially down the road. But the ability, certainly on the Gulf Coast, to produce hydrogen well in excess of the local demand, it exists. And so then it becomes where internationally will it go? Will it go to Asia? Will it go to Europe? Will it go to some of both? We really need an international market for the markets to clear, to get the lowest cost resources to their best use. Domestically, again, we're bottlenecked by the fact that the resources are low cost here, particularly natural gas, which is the competition for hydrogen.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're in a very unique time at this recording because it's just before the US presidential inauguration. And obviously, there's a lot of questions as to what's going to happen with the market going forward. Perhaps as a final, more controversial question, I'd be interested to know what you think of the latest round of PTC incentives currently being put forward, and whether or not you think it's enough to get green hydrogen off the ground, and what you think that means for support on blue or low carbon hydrogen.
A lot in that question, Tom, but first of all, very pleased to see the PTC credits out. I know that was a very challenging process for the DOE because they had many parties weigh in with comments all over the board. My sense is the basic framework, which I think of as the three pillars that compose the initial draft, where capacity has to be incremental, it has to be in the same region, and the production has to match, the power production has to match the production of hydrogen, is all basically in place, remains in place. What changed were relaxation of constraints, and I would say mainly on the blue side. So on the green side, the major relaxation of constraint was annual matching was postponed to 2030, which is what Europe has, as opposed to 2028 in the initial draft. But I think more importantly was now there's the opportunity for certain nuclear capacity to qualify for more customized upstream and midstream emissions, natural gas emissions, methane emissions into production of blue hydrogen to be incorporated as opposed to the standard model, the standard GREET model. There's a provision to use RNG renewable natural gas, although there's still some ambiguity about first productive use. But anyway, there's a path to use that. So there's more leeway on the blue side, the way I read it, which I think will further accentuate the advantages that blue hydrogen production has on the Gulf Coast in the United States, again, because of low-cost natural gas coupled with the proximity to CCUS opportunities. So you mentioned the incoming administration, and the incoming president is well reported to talk about all this as the green new scam, but really there's less green in it at this point than there is incentives to promote the activation of blue hydrogen predominantly, and that's where the incumbent oil and gas players and large utilities and such play. So, who knows what the new administration is going to do, but my sense is there's a lot there for that administration to favor, given how things are playing out.
Yes, it's going to be very interesting to see, given how unpredictable Trump can be. But thank you for your insights there. It was a good little idea of what the audience can expect if they're joining us on site for the event in Houston. Andy, I want to thank you for your time and your opinions. Audience, if you want to hear more from Andy, he's going to be speaking on the 1st and the 2nd of April at the event for our World Hydrogen North America Congress. And if you want to find out more, you'll be able to do that by going to our website. Please check that out. We'll have this interview and a range of others from some of our other speakers available for you to get a sneak peek into what is to come. So, Andy, thank you once again for your time and for your insights. I know there's going to be a lot more to come. Do you have anything to say before we sign off?
Looking forward to the dialogue. There's things happening new all the time in this space, so I'm sure there'll be new things to talk about when we get to April.
Great stuff. Well, thank you again, Andy, and thank you for everyone watching, and we'll see you very soon.
Take care.